This is a drawing of the triumphal arch of Constantine the Great, not far away from the Roman Colosseum, on the edges of the ancient Forum. I drew this from a series of sittings that I had made with my sketchbook, my charcoals, and some readings that I was doing at the time about Constantine and the various things that he did that marked him as the end of an era and the beginning of another one, namely the end of the Roman Empire and the beginning of the Middle Ages. So when I was doing this drawing, so many things came to my mind, some of them being historical about Constantine and his mother Helen, the fact that Helen wasn't really even the official wife of his emperor father, etc., namely family issues. Also, I would remember things that my own grandmother used to say to me when I was growing up about how one day I would triumph. Tu triunfarás, she would say to me. At any rate, when I came to Rome to draw this arch, I had already spent here probably about a good 10 months or so, and I had been drawing with students sometimes or on my own to try to perfect my techniques at perspective. So in those days, I was thinking very long and hard about the fact that I was in Rome. I was in Rome for good, and that I was going to make good here as best as I could the reasons why I had come to Rome in the first place. I had come to Rome to teach freehand drawing, what they call in Spanish dibujo a mano alzada, diseño libero, dessin en main levée, as they say in French. So I had thought a lot about the hand because, as a matter of fact, not too many months after I decided to stay in Rome, I broke my right wrist, I broke my right hand, and I thought that I would be never able to draw again. I was able to draw again, but it took a lot of drawing actually to draw again. It's kind of a tautology. So, that said, I very much concentrated on what it meant to draw freehand and why the University of Miami School of Architecture had brought me here to teach students how to see parallel lines, how to draw parallel lines in their drawings, but to make sure that when they were looking at and drawing something frontally with parallel lines, that their parallel lines would not collapse and meet. However, when my students were drawing things in perspective, things at a distance, lines that were parallel right under their feet, say the lines of a sidewalk or even of two railroad tracks, would seem to meet in infinity, in some really far away point away from their eye. All of this to say that I eventually started thinking largely about things that I had learned in my university days when I was studying at St. John's College and trying to understand how to read the philosophers that appear in Raphael's great fresco in the Vatican, namely Plato on the left-hand side, and I'm sorry for the reflections here, Plato on the left-hand side and Aristotle on the right, in the great School of Athens of Raphael. In the School of Athens, Raphael paints himself towards the right of the fresco, looking at us spectators. It's almost like a selfie, next to his teacher Perugino wearing white, it is thought, in the company of several philosophers of astronomy, namely Ptolemy and perhaps Zoroaster, and then his good friend's bald head posing for the head of the great geometer of the time of Aristotle and Plato, Euclid, who's bending down to show students how to take the area of the Star of David. All of this to say that soon after I started going to the Vatican museums and leading some walks there and taking students to see the place, I became very aware of the fact that there was a grid, almost like a cage of lines, that was a guide or a series of guidelines for the understanding perhaps of the fresco, and that Plato and Aristotle were standing in the center of a Roman arch, but with a peculiarity that from the center of the entire composition, where all lines radiated from the top and from the bottom, notice the light white lines and the green lines from the bottom, you had sort of a journey from the bottom left side from Pythagoras in the group of figures on the left-hand side of the fresco, and from Euclid, where he's teaching his students how to take the area of the Star of David. There was a line that went up and formed the green triangle there, where Aristotle's hand is, with Aristotle's extended hand. So the point is that there was a point of the composition of the fresco, and it was Aristotle's hand. So here was Aristotle talking about the importance of freeing the hand, or allowing the hand to be almost a signal of freedom in this painting about the school of Athens and freedom of speech in the days of the school of Athens. Soon, my reflections all the way from the triumphal arch of Constantine took me to make parallels with this arch of the frame of this great fresco by Raphael, and to realize that, interestingly enough, Raphael had placed all these great philosophers, with Plato and Aristotle in the center, Pythagoras on the left with his Pythagorean theorem, and Euclid on the right, who quotes the Pythagorean theorem in his book of geometry, inside perspective space, where lines that are parallel do meet at infinity. So, thus, the green lines here that converge in Aristotle's hand are nothing but the lines of the side of the road, so to speak, on the pavement that all of these great sages are standing on. And finally, you have the white lines here from the cornices of the arches of a building where they're all congregated, essentially constructing deep three-dimensional space with a vanishing point. And the idea is that the Greek world of Aristotle and Plato is meeting in this vanishing point inside real perspective space. However, one of the things that I remembered from my St. John's days was that, in fact, the Greeks, when one studies Euclid, pretty much do not allow for the use of the word infinity, so that lines meeting at infinity was something of an anachronism for them. It was something of an anathema. They would never have said that lines met at infinity. The most they would say would be that they met indefinitely, well, approach each other indefinitely far away and approach each other some more, but they would never actually touch, because that would be non-Euclidean space. So here we are with my drawings in Rome and my meditations on lines, parallel or otherwise, and the importance of freeing the hand, freeing the hand, freeing the hand.